people feel better quicker physically. And like if they work out with a personal trainer every day, they do that not because it's like, oh, you work with a trainer every day, how cool is that? It's people start to feel better about themselves much quicker when they're moving their body, they have fresh air. There's multiple avenues of taking care of your body and learning about that. And some people, acupuncture is not their thing, but they tried it. But some people, it becomes their total thing.
Welcome to The Healing Blueprint. I'm your host, Jill Briansky. On this podcast, I speak with experts from traditional and holistic healing modalities. And together, we share insights, tools, and practical guidance so you can create your own healing blueprint. Let's move into today's episode and get started. Today, we are talking about addiction and recovery and how it impacts not only the lives of the people that are going through it, but their families. And I'm joined today by Lori McCarthy, co-founder and executive director of Herren Wellness. Lori, thank you for being with me today.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
You have an extensive background in addiction and recovery. What brought you to it and what keeps you in it?
That's a great question. I think that it's been my whole entire life, and grew up with addiction in the family. And I was fortunate when I was 15 years old. My father got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous, and that introduction changed the trajectory of all of our lives. And when I was in my 20s and struggling myself with alcohol, I knew where to go. There was no stigma around it in our family. It was very much celebrated and admired. So I got sober at 26 years old and in the 80s, and just fell in love with recovery. I got into the field sort of organically by accident. I was back in our hometown. My husband and I had been living in California and San Francisco, and we moved back to the town we grew up in, and a lot of people were like friends. I was very open about my recovery, and I started to get calls from just friends and people I knew about, like, so-and-so may be struggling, so-and-so may, can I pick your brain or whatever? And I ended up calling a friend of mine who was in the field, and I said, oh my gosh, like, I love talking to families, and maybe I should do this work. And so I ended up going and being trained by Judith Landau, who founded the Arise intervention model. And then that brought me to working for a program that brought me to working and developing new programs and ways of helping and treating people. It brought me to meeting Chris and Heather Herren, and I love the work. So it happened sort of by accident being in the field, but I've been a recipient of recovery since I was 15.
It sounds like you walking through your own story without shaming, blaming, or judging yourself allowed you to be almost like a magnet for these other people that were experiencing something similar. And you just got to step into this space that naturally fit for you.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much, I didn't realize how much stigma there was around it until I started working in the field. I really thought if somebody was in recovery, we looked at them as, wow, it's almost like it's incredible. And we had, so much respect for my dad. He owned a restaurant in Boston. He just loved life, like sort of found like the reason for a lot of the generational pain, and wow, that's why. Or he just had this curiosity about him. And I didn't know that, I didn't know people felt shame about it, which is why, like, in my work prior to the field. I was in radio and advertising, and I told everybody. I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't drink. I drank enough. I'm in recovery. I didn't even think someone could judge me poorly on that." So I think at Herren and Chris and Heather, so they're so proud and willing to share and willing to say it's okay. Like, I felt pain too. Like, we're going to do this as a we thing, and we want you to look at sobriety as a superpower. And so sort of that's we bring that into the program. And, Chris had a very different experience. I mean, he had tons of shame around it. He was a public figure. He was an NBA basketball player. He was, I think the headline on the Boston Globe was, "What a shame." So he had a different experience, obviously, than me. But we have the same, we don't want anyone to feel shame walking in the door. We want you to be like, that's a big step, because it's really hard to do. So it's special, really special. I feel very fortunate that was my experience.
It's a very powerful message to focus on the courage of the person moving forward and taking steps to transform and change their life and where they are, than focusing on something that people perceive as a negative.
Right. For our younger, adults that come in, I'll tell them, this is your master's program. You are learning about yourself, and if you stay in this process, you will grow and learn learning is ongoing for your whole life. And I think that a lot of people don't get forced into having to look at their behaviors, the way they think, why their perspectives are this way, the negative sort of force that lives within us as far as self-esteem and all that. And I think that suffering from any kind of struggle, substance use, addiction, anxiety, depression, it forces us to look within, and that requires courage. It's forced in the beginning. But the upside of that being forced is there's this freedom there and growth that's what's really going on in recovery. It's not just the absence of substances is you can't have it without that, because it messes us up, obviously, but it's the learning and the growing as a person that recovery is just the foundation and the platform to be able to do that work. So we frame it a little bit like that in our program, and try to give people that sense of pride.
Yeah. And I just want to tack on to that, to what you're saying about it being forced, because they still have a choice for the most part, right? They have a choice. I could stay with my addiction and I can continue down the road I'm going on, or I have to face myself and create change. So I'm leaning on that because it's still an active choice for the person to say, wait a minute, I do want to do that work. I do want to look inside. And you're holding space for people to do that in such a gentle and compassionate way. It allows the shame to fall away.
Yeah, I remember doing interventions. So many times we'd be in the room and they would be defensive, or I don't need to do that. I can do this on my own, or I don't want to do that. And I would say, of course, I know. And because I think we believe that when you're in active addiction, it's really hard to make a good decision for yourself, because the fear is overwhelming and the loss of control, and it's a blank slate on the other side, and that's terrifying. So I think most people, they don't want to, but they will. So it's kind of I know you don't want to, but are you willing to just try? And that's enough. That, I feel like that if someone is willing to try, that's all we need to start. And it's in that mind. I think that's one of my biggest challenges and where I don't struggle the most, but I feel the most for the person is I want to just tell them, like, you don't know, it's going to be unbelievable on the other side, but they don't know me. I don't have credibility with that. I don't know their particular situation, I'm a stranger. So I wish I could give them a forward, a future. Here's the future for you. And oh my gosh, but you don't believe in that yet. And of course you don't. So it's very hard to show to have someone believe in the other side of pain, to try and trust and believe.
Yeah. And that's where working and doing this in a community setting, I imagine, is really helpful. And you work with all sorts of addictions. Have you noticed any sort of a difference between working with somebody who has like a gambling addiction and someone who has like a substance use addiction?
Yeah, I think I'll like the gambling addiction, or, sex addiction or porn. I was doing a podcast with Chris, and we had one of our alumni on who came for a gambling addiction. And Chris asked him, "What is your biggest trigger?" And he said, "My phone." And in that moment, we were like, oh, we walk around with our phones attached to us everywhere we go. We don't have to walk into a liquor store or like go somewhere, or now marijuana can be delivered to your house, but you still have to, the phone is, so we talk to people before they come in, and we say, like, we are going to remove all electronics. So they're in with other guests that have access to their phones and are, on their laptops, or maybe they're doing some work, and that particular group or those particular struggles require a different sort of plan. And they can use the Herren wellness phone for families and things like that. We tell them ahead of time, like, this is how we work with this. And then there's like an introduction later on, and based on the individual needs and all of that, we'll adjust to that. But we will take TVs out of rooms, and they appreciate it. It ends up being that folks that struggle with those types of addictions, and use, it's almost like, oh, thank God that's away from me now. And that gives them time to really be in the room. And we've never had anyone, with those struggles that were angry about not having the phone or a laptop. Almost like, thank you. So it's like some of the strategies are different, but the community as a whole, it doesn't matter to anybody what somebody's there for. It's that, and this is Chris's message when he speaks to kids all over the country. Struggle is struggle. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, people don't feel good, and it's a tough place. And we have a lot of young adults struggling with marijuana. And, COVID had kept them very isolated. And so there's so many, being open to all these different strategies. We have an IFS counselor that comes in and does a workshop. And so we introduce parts, and we introduce coping mechanisms, and like how we got here. Like, we're here in this place. Why? And usually it's just how we've learned to cope and manage and protect, and it's labeled addiction, but it's really very universal. Some of us develop really positive and healthy coping mechanisms, and a lot of us developed really unhealthy. And putting it in that scope removes the stigma.
And that seems like a really important part of what you do, is taking the stigma, taking the negativity away, and looking at the person as a person.
Yes.
So it doesn't matter where the struggle is coming from. You're a human being and I'm a human being. How can we work together in order to help you feel better?
Right. Exactly. Yes. And we introduced when we first opened, we wanted yoga, we wanted massage therapy, we wanted acupuncture. And we didn't want it to just be, oh, look at all you get on the website. When people do, we ask everyone to engage in all of it, at least try it once. People feel better quicker physically. And like if they work out with a personal trainer every day, they do that not because it's like, oh, you work with a trainer every day. How cool is that? It's people start to feel better about themselves much quicker when they're moving their body. They have fresh air. There's multiple avenues of taking care of your body and um, learning about that. And some people, acupuncture is not their thing, but they tried it. But some people, it becomes their total thing. So it's, working with, we don't believe in just one path. Alcoholics Anonymous was my family and my own, like, it's the greatest thing that ever happened to us. But there are other paths. So we try to offer whatever connection is going to work. Like we're going to introduce it and work on the fact that isolation is super unhealthy for us and connection is really powerful.
And what I'm hearing is that you look at everything through more of a holistic lens, right? You're looking at the whole being, their body, their mind, their energy, their spirit, everything sort of coming together. And you're saying, let's address all these parts, not just the addiction. Let's address the person underneath. And the physical body is part of the person underneath. And it sounds like what you're finding is that while working on all parts together helps someone feel better quicker.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Chris will say it's the first time he said it, it was so profound. He walked on the campus and he went into the dining room and he saw a guest that he may have been on the road for the week or something. And it was fairly new guest. And he said, your eyes are smiling. Like, welcome. Like, all of a sudden their heads are up. Like the body language is people come in very, very like this and then all of a sudden, like their head's a little up. They'll be like, hi, Lori. Or they'll feel, we had a recent guest. She was terrified to come in, terrified, never done anything, never been in a program, so afraid. And I was thinking like, she's going to feel like this is her home in 3 days. And she's walking around there like, she's got a smile on her face. And those are the things that we're like building new memories, building new brain waves, positive versus negative. So that's kind of what we look for in the program. We're not saying you did this for 30 days and you went to 20 groups and you're ready to graduate. We look at how do they show up in the program in every like how do they and if people have bad days, they struggle, they get angry, they run out, like that's good for us because that's information that we can use. There's people are on their best behavior too in the beginning and we want to see the real thing. So it's a great place to be. Yeah.
I've been using an analogy lately about a pilot light being in the heart center. And it sounds exactly like what you're talking about. Like they walk in and their pilot light has been out.
Yeah.
And after a couple of days, their pilot light comes back on. Their essence comes back in. They have a better understanding of who they are. And you use this word home. Why is that so important to your program to have people think of it as home?
Yeah, I think it's like a grounding. So we want the campus to be like have a good memory and reference to that's where like the home, like Chris loves that he'll be talking to somebody and they'll say, I got to go over to my house is over there. Like I live in that building. And it's because, I think when people feel comfortable where they are physically, mentally, you have more of an open mind. You get better. Like if you look at our program as there's healing and the health there, then alumni, like it's your reference point. It's like growing up with a very loving, nurturing family, but also a family that kept you safe, that had hard conversations with you, that asked you to be accountable. It's like putting all of that sort of parenting and home, what comes with home? Accountability, love, protection, an opportunity to learn. So it's the vibe that we think is very, very helpful and a little bit different of a model. And we think it's one of the things that makes it very different and very special.
And one part of home that I don't think I heard you say, so if you said it, I apologize, but I know is a cornerstone of what you do is the word family.
Yes. Yes.
And how does the family come together? How do they stay together? How do you keep this family supporting each other?
That's a great question. And it is one of the cornerstones, one of the more important ones of our program. Because Chris and Heather's experience back in the early 2000s when he went to treatment was he got dropped off and it was like Heather wasn't even invited in. Like, you brought him here, you got to go now. Like, we got him. And she was very lost. And luckily she had a friend of a friend or something that she could reach out to, but she didn't have Al-Anon. They were a very public couple. So her privacy, like it was so hard for her because, and within that, like Chris got better faster than Heather emotionally. He's there in a program getting more, and she's like at home with three kids. So we wanted the families to have a lot of attention and a lot of care and understanding and support. And we will explain to our guests and our families that you're coming at this very differently. How mom or dad feels your struggle is very different than how you feel it, as far as like perspective. Or a spouse is different than a sibling, or a parent to a child, like a parent's in treatment. A child's going to have, or a teenager or a young adult is going to have a very different feeling about their loved one, their mom being in treatment than the spouse is. So it's having all of these different perspectives. That's why we have the family support group. It's separate from the guests, and the families are there to learn. We do a lot of guest speakers from our family alumni. We have the family alumni because in recovery, we want the alumni families to know that, like, it's not a straight line and you can get rattled and it's okay. Let's talk through it. We help families. I say to our staff all the time, we're not here to fix it. We're here to improve communication and try and gain some respect and compassion for what another person experience with this is. And again, it's different. The guest feels it differently than the family member. And so we do family meetings. We do really hard, difficult, conversations. And again, it's just building this stronger communication, and the families and the guests separately get to have their own feelings. And we try not to impose each other's onto each other, because that's where there's so much with struggle. There's fear, anger, there's every emotion you could possibly imagine as a family member. Parents feel it differently than spouses. It's like, kick them out. And there's a lot of, like, I'm a mom, like it would be different for me with my husband. I'd be like, see ya. No, I'm kidding. But it's so helping people to understand, like validating, of course you're here. Of course. And there's a lot of wreckage. There's a lot of damage. There's a lot of consequences. And there's a difference between shame and accountability. And we try very hard to help our guests be accountable without the shame. And it's hard, but it's necessary, I think, for the healing.
And I think it's really important that you're working with their family members as well. Now, I know that you're in Massachusetts, but if family members are in other places, are they still able to access these services?
Yes. So we do the family support groups are via Zoom. The alumni support is via Zoom, and we can do family meetings via Zoom. So, I mean, we love in person, but it's not possible. So we do family meetings via Zoom.
So
Yeah. Mhm.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, so you make it accessible to people in order to really bring the family back together, not just the person back to themselves, but the person back to their family of origin.
Yeah. And with the idea that everybody's learning, like the families are learning too, everybody's learning in this process. And that's real. It's not, I think there was the common, I don't think we did a very good job in addiction treatment, and only because I don't think we didn't have we didn't have tons of knowledge that we do now about the brain and addiction and all this. And very often it was, you go away for 30 days and you come back and you're better. So what's up? And we know now there's so much more than that. And that the families, you don't drop someone off and then it doesn't end, the process is, and there's still feelings that are raw. And, we try to tell our guests we very much put this in their minds and stress how important it is to give their loved ones grace when they're home. They were not in this program every day in groups and learning about themselves. Like they're going to hold their breath for a long time. And as long as they need, and rather than be defensive or make it a trust thing, we want them to just hold grace for they're afraid, that like something, and Chris talks a lot about the time when he was 10 months in treatment and a continuum of care from detox to inpatient to sober living to home. And he talks a lot about how Heather, he could see in Heather's face, like he did something that made her nervous, or he would go to the store and she would just have this reaction. And he learned to just respect that so much. And to this day, he's coming up on 18 years on Saturday. If Heather calls, we could be anywhere. He answers the phone. It's like such a beautiful thing. It's like I noticed it. Like, of course, when we first started working together so closely every day, and over the years, he's going to step out of the meet. Like it's just this respect. And we share that with the guests. Just hold grace. And because it isn't, and I tell people, it's not trust. It's not about trust. They're fighting a thing more powerful. They're fighting a disease, not you. They're fighting your behaviors when you were in this cycle. And to make them see and try and understand the difference.
It all sounds very powerful and compassionate and actually heart-centered. And I want to thank you so much for sharing all of this and sharing your story and Chris's story. Is there any final words that you would like our listeners to hear, or something that you would like them to take?
Yeah, I think that I think we need to talk a lot more about prevention. We have a model in our program that we don't believe you have to hit rock bottom. We believe that if you recognize an issue, that you are more than welcome to come to a wellness center and get super healthy and strong and reset like whatever path maybe you were going down. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that available. Like preventing it. I mean, chronic disease, there's prevention. And we teach it in schools to our kids, but people really still don't know what to do. And so being curious, like if you go on our website, we have all these different like paths, like my retired parent is drinking more, like what should I do? Or my son or daughter is isolating, and like you don't have to come to a program. You can though. And I think there's a lot more work to be done with making prevention be available and not like some outlier. Like we have a lot of young adults that probably wouldn't be in a rehab. but they are getting strong and thriving and working on some emotional stuff. And so I think the message, like, you don't have to hit rock bottom to want to get better.
That's a really important message.
Yeah.
And I think you're filling in a space that is been overlooked for a really long time.
Yeah.
And you mentioned people can go to your website. Can you just let them know what your website is?
Sure. Yeah. So it's herrenwellness.com, www.herrenwellness.com, HERREN wellness.com.
Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate
Thank you.
everything.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
That's a wrap for this episode. Honor what landed, release what didn't, and we'll see you next time on The Healing Blueprint.